when it all boils down to it, I don't think that there's one like educational pedagogy that works for like everyone, right? I think it really depends on the person, your background, where you're from, like what you need most.
We at BrightEyes recognize that to be successful, we all require someone willing to invest in our potential and vision.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the BrightEyes Podcast. This episode's a little experimental, but this is Kevin, as you probably recognize from a previous podcast, and where he's going to be kicking off this one and being the guest host for this one. So, yeah.
All right,
take
sweet,
it away,
man. All right, so you interviewed me last time, so I thought it'd be a good idea to interview you back and let people know who the person asking all the question is. So, like Kevin Rose starts it. So where did it all begin, right? How did it all start? How old are you now? Sort of what shaped the ideas that you have now and the aspirations that you have now. And, it could be from like when you're 5 or when you're 10, but, where did it start?
This is kind of a big question that you're asking, a tall order.
Yeah. Well, so like we can start with more specific, right? Like, so you're super passionate about education.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that start?
Where did that start? Well, to answer your first question, before I'm 20, and I started about education. I started around my junior, senior year of high school, when I started asking a lot of questions. When everyone else around me started applying for colleges, right? When you're in high school, you're in junior year, that's when, holy crap, this is when it gets real, like people are applying to colleges, people are leaving, people are thinking about their futures and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of got to the point where, I started thinking about that too, but I took a very different approach than most of my peers. One of my good friends, Brandon, who was on an earlier podcast, we've been friends for a long time, and he was the one who introduced me during that time to a book called The Education of Millionaires by Michael Ellsberg. Have you read that book?
I have not.
So the thing that sticks out to me about that book is that the introduction, I remember reading the introduction, and I was like, how old was I? I was like 15 or 16 at the time, or I think probably 16, 17 maybe. And the introduction to that book is this depiction of an interview, like a job interview, right? Where there's a hiring manager and then there's someone trying to get the job, right? One of them is in t-shirt and jeans, the other one is completely dressed up. One has an MBA, the other one doesn't. And then at the end of the introduction, he pulls out that the person offering the job is the guy that doesn't have a master's degree and is the one in a t-shirt. And he's the one interviewing the PhD for a job. And the whole premise of the book was talking about how basically the most valuable skills in life, in the workplace, in all these different areas aren't the ones you learn in school. Those can make a difference, but the most valuable ones that set you apart from everyone else, that make you most hireable, someone that people want to work with, aren't the things that you learn in school. And so that got me thinking, like, okay, if the most valuable things aren't the things I learn in school, why is everyone else around me, spending 4 years of their lives?
Right. So how did that affect your decisions?
Right. So that, well, it wasn't a very smooth route, right?
Right.
So first
It never is.
First I was like, okay, F the system, I'm down, I'm done with this, I don't want to go to school, I'm not going to go to college, like blah, 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 I'm going to do my own thing. And for the longest time, I wanted to actually take a year off. I wanted to say, hey, I don't want to do that for a little bit, I want to, first figure out what I want to do. I want to figure out what I'm passionate about. Always that comes back down to that excuse, and that's where I started basing a lot of my decisions, because I didn't want to just do what everyone else did, and people around me did not take that well.
Of course.
My parents were like, no, just don't question it, just do it. People thought I was crazy. People thought I was like, why would you not want to go to college? Like, do you not want to have a future? Do you want to work at McDonald's or something like that? I was like, no, like, that's not the point of why I'm asking these questions. Like, I don't think people, when I really started stepping out and asking those questions, I don't think the people around me really understood, like, why I was asking those things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then I started jumping around the internet a little bit more. Found people like Seth Godin. Read one of his books called the manifesto. Some manifesto that he wrote.
He's written so many books, man.
Yeah, he has.
Can't remember all the titles.
Yeah, I can't. And so like it was just kind of a reflection, and I was reading and I was like, yeah, after every single chapter, we were like, yeah, this is on point, legit, like blah blah blah.
I think all of his books are very good at doing that too.
They are.
Nailing in the points.
Yeah, I read another one recently called Tribes. Tribes is really good.
Yep. Purple Cow was just really hit the nail on the head on how to build a product or a brand or a company.
So to finish that one.
Yeah, so back to that point. So what specific decisions did you make based off of what you learned, and then what did that lead to? And what got you to UCSD if you were thinking that, right?
Right. So it was to this point of a lot of confusion, and I just kind of I talked to my parents a lot. There was a lot of back and forth between me and my parents, and finally it hit a point where I was like I need to stop being such a entitled little brat,
Mm-hmm.
and since my parents are well off enough, thank you mom and dad, well off enough to provide me with the opportunity to go for an education, higher education. It would be somewhat disrespectful for me not to take that, right? And so it came down to that, and it came down to my parents telling me like, hey, you're young, you don't understand the point, like it's okay, like just do it, like you'll see why later. And I was like,
do you see why yet? So you've been in school for 2 years now.
Right, I've been in school, this is my third year.
Yeah.
And
2.5.
2.5, mm-hmm. And while I think many of the things that I brought up during that time, in my high school, junior and senior year, while a lot of those things I still find to be true,
Mm-hmm.
I think I realized a lot more, like there's a lot more value, or it's a lot different than what I expected. And I think that's something that it took me a while of kicking and screaming before I finally settled down. I was like, I'm gonna just finish this.
Sure.
So
but was there like sort of this other side of you that's like, well, just because I have this opportunity doesn't mean I have to take it?
Right, and so that was kind of an area of contention for me.
Like,
right.
A lot of people have the opportunity to get a 6-figure job and slave away,
right,
and be you'd be like sort of on the top of the food chain. I think that's where a lot of at least my peers are striving for.
Right.
But many also decide not to take it, right?
Mm.
So, in parallel with the decision you made, so what steered you away from that?
Right. So I think it just came down to my parents telling me that they went through it, and they got a lot of value out of it. That's what brought them to where they are today, and that I should at least give it a shot. And so I agreed with that. I couldn't disagree with that, and so I told my parents, I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't like, I'm gonna do it all the way through. I'm gonna see it all the way through. I wasn't like, okay, I'll do it. And then I kind of went into my first year with the intention of, okay, I'm gonna try it out. if it works out well, I'll keep going. If it doesn't, then you know.
So you obviously did really well in school too, right? To get into UCSD.
Right.
But you just decided.
So, you know, this is kind of interesting because I was having a conversation with a friend just like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And he was asking me like, if you were to do your college over again, what would you do differently? And you know, that's something that I've been thinking about for a little bit, and especially when it comes to college, because right now my younger sister's going through that whole thing of, you know, applying to college as well. She's a junior.
It's scary, man. It's
and you know, I'm just kind of like putting myself in her shoes. Like, if I was there again, what would I do differently? And the answer that comes out, I would actually be more serious about where I apply. You know, because back then I was very like, you know, I was pretty much like, I had this mentality of F the system, I don't really care, so I didn't really do too hard on my applications, I just kind of do whatever. And then I didn't even apply to like many of the top schools, so I didn't care. I didn't apply to Stanford, I didn't apply anywhere on the East Coast, I didn't even apply to Berkeley, and because like I was just like, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So most of the people watching this probably aren't going to be high schoolers, but I just want to throw this idea out there, right? I think the most successful institutions are like the best at marketing, and I think most high schoolers end up making decisions. I think most undergrads that apply for internships and jobs end up making decisions based off of the branding that the institutions do. So for high schoolers, institutions would be colleges. For undergrads recently graduating, the institutions would be like fucking Deloitte or KPMG, whatever, you know, the slave companies. So and no one really actually looks into it, right? Like who actually, I just hear, you know, okay, you know, Cal is number 1, UCLA is probably up there, tied number 1 or number 2, and the UCSD is number 3, but it's the furthest away, so I picked UCSD. You know, even like Google and Facebook, they spend so much resources like marketing their jobs as like the top, you know. But and then to high schoolers, all the universities marketing to you as being the top universities. I think most people making those decisions really have to dig underneath the marketing, that surface layer of the brand, number 1, number 2, number 3. All that stuff doesn't matter because every person is different. And every person should look for their individual institution that will sort of guide them in their career or their interests. But yeah, you would be one of the few that I know that looked that far in high school.
Yeah. So I mean, the reason why I would say that, you know, if I were to go back and do it again, you know, and I would apply to places that, you know, like Stanford, isn't so much because of the school, but more because of, you know, just my experience with the Bay Area since I've been in college. You know, I think, you know, back in high school, I didn't quite realize how big of a deal being in Palo Alto was, you know, or being in San Jose, you know, being in the Bay Area was. And, you know, had I had the chance to do it again, I probably would have tried to stay closer to the, you know, the heart of the industry that, you know, I'm trying to be in.
Well, what's the industry you want to be in?
So right now it would mostly be tech.
Got it.
And, you know, not necessarily like the big tech companies like the Google or Facebook or whatever, but just being around that area.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, I've been here for like 4.5 years now, and I think as soon as my girlfriend finishes pharmacy school, we want to head back up there.
Right.
Just more for like the general culture and the amount of energy and the amount of people. You know, I think, and then sort of more people that are like-minded, running into them randomly would, you know, there's more opportunities just in general.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, in summary, the point is most people probably should look definitely past the surface layer into, like, dig deep into, like, what do I want? Where do I want to be? What do I think I'm passionate about, at least, right? Instead of picking it based on, you know, ranking some website.
Right.
Made up.
Exactly.
Or, you know, who knows, UCSD could have easily paid that website. For some reason, UCSD is always ranked number 1 in the, was it the Washington...
Oh, is it?
Whatever, Washington Review, whatever it is. Every single year. Only in that newspaper, though. Right. Suspicious. But, okay, so you got into college, and so what made you decide on UCSD?
So, I think in the grand scheme of applying for colleges and doing a tour around the different schools, I did a tour around just kind of all the California schools. I applied to UCLA, applied to Irvine, applied to Cal Poly, UCSD.
So did you even care when you got into a school or got rejected from the school?
I mean, I got the letter. I still have all my rejection letters. I kept them just for fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was kind of like, okay, cool. You know, it wasn't like I was super emotionally like involved either way, whether I got in or didn't. But it was just kind of like, okay, cool. But the reason I ended up with UCSD is because I think I remember like just touring all the campuses, and out of all the places I went, for some reason UCSD was just kind of like the place that seemed most kind of friendly to me. Don't know why.
What were your top 3 choices?
Probably UCSD, UCLA. LA and SD were the 2 in California that I could see myself at. I also applied, actually out of state, I applied UT Austin, Carnegie Mellon, and Georgia Tech. But I think, and like, yeah, I like those, but you know, I also kind of wanted to be in California. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So it just kind of like UCSD, when it all was said and done, I didn't get into UCLA, and then UCSD was like, you know, the one that
in California.
Yeah, the one in California, and I was like, oh.
Okay, that makes sense. So after you got into UCSD, what was it like? So what did your mentality shift? Yeah.
Right. So I remember moving here, moving to San Diego, and I think the first quarter and a half, I was just completely like, why am I here? Like it was just kind of, I was asking myself that, and I don't know about you, but the first quarter and a half of college feels like an extended like summer camp.
Yeah.
It doesn't really feel
same
like life, you know?
Yeah.
It just like everything, like there's a dining hall, you know, everything's like, it's like going to get your food from like the dining hall, and then like, you know, like you go to classes and you're living in this like suite, and it just feels more like a cabin, you know, like a like a summer camp, and so it just felt really, it just didn't feel real.
In a good way or a bad way?
I don't know. I mean, I was having a lot of fun, no doubt.
Yeah.
But something still inside of me during that whole time was kind of like going back to my reservations that I had in high school, and which I was just kind of like, see, like there's nothing more than this. This is.
Do you think that took away from your experience, or do you think that added to just to have a different perspective?
You know, I think I remember complaining to some of the friends I met, and I don't know if that was like the best way to make new friends or whatever.
Are you still friends with them now?
I am.
Okay.
I am, so
it didn't affect it that much.
It didn't, but it was kind of like, like people kind of remember me as a guy who like
the pessimist.
Yeah, the first thing was like pessimist about college. I was gonna say something else. But like I think that's, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it turned out okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that having that mentality of like, you know, like what is college for, like blah blah blah, that was more of like a red pill. You know, it's kind of like, to put it in the Matrix terms, it's like, you know, you take the red pill or you take the blue pill, right? You take the red pill and you can't see like things differently.
Right.
You see things differently, like you can't go back. You know, and so it was just kind of like one of those things that, you know, like, I don't know, if I didn't have that, maybe my experience would be a lot different. Maybe I just kind of follow along, but at the same time, it wouldn't be where I am today.
Right.
So.
Okay, and then what are the top 3 experiences that shaped who you are today, since entering UCSD?
Oh man, it'd be really tough. you know, so much has happened since I came into UCSD. So many different experiences that, you know, I think resulted as
What jumped out?
a result. I mean, I would say definitely the BrightEyes trip would be one of them.
Is this going to be out before the application is due? Shout out.
Probably not, but if you didn't apply, then you're missing out. So that'd be bad. The BrightEyes trip would be one of them, just because it was a very it was a good experience, just actually getting to meet with a lot of venture capital. Like
I missed out.
I have no
it,
idea.
right?
Yeah, you missed half of it.
Or most of it.
It's okay. You were in China or something like that.
Yeah.
But like I think like just being able to meet with, you know, I had no idea what venture capital was before going.
Oh wow.
I actually was like, I think
So you must have been mind blown.
Yeah, I was like, I had an idea,
You're just
but like
huge gamblers.
I had no idea like what the whole thing was about. I had no idea, you know,
Right.
how equity worked. You know, I had no idea how any of like, you know, how a lot of the legal, like more technical
Right.
stuff of startups, you know, worked, and that trip introduced me to a lot of that, and I was like, what the F?
Okay. And what's number 2 and number 3?
Oh man, this would be tough. I think a lot of oh man.
Just off the top.
I would say, to be completely honest, number 2 would probably have to be just, you know, different relationships and friendships that happened in college. You know, you come. I think there's just something about, you know, being an adolescent and the, you know, the process of going from a high school senior to an adult that, you know, involves a lot of, you know, whether it be relationships, whatever. I had my fair share of things that went down. And
Great experiences.
Great experiences. So those things, I won't get too deep into the weeds there.
So
but
just girls, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So number 2, number 3. What would number 3 be? Number 3, I would say, would probably be, up to this point, would be having the chance last summer to go to New York. I think New York was very interesting, and also kind of.
You guys notice how all these things are outside of school?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, you know, I don't really remember much in school, because so I think what was very formative about New York for me was just the fact that, you know, I've been working with this nonprofit called Student Voice for a couple of years now.
What is it?
And Student Voice is pretty much a nonprofit. It's a student-run nonprofit that helps students have a bigger voice in education, right? So we run initiatives to basically bring students into the education conversation as, you know, the stakeholders of what, you know, education should actually be. And so going to New York, like I actually met some of these, like the whole team in person for the first time.
Okay.
And it was the most kind of bizarre experience, because, you know, I met them on Twitter. I've been working with them for about a year, and then I go to New York, and they're all real people, you know. And it's like you start seeing things about people that you would have never otherwise known just by working with them online through video chat and
right.
stuff. So that was really, really cool. And then just beyond just what we were able to put on as a student-run team,
right.
Working remotely, it's just like, it blows my mind, you know, whenever I think about it.
Right. So just nailing that point, that all of this is outside of the classroom, outside of most things school related,
right.
But being a student and being in school acted as a platform for, right, BrightEyes,
exactly.
Meeting girls, and and what was it? Students what? The organization, the student voice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, you know, very similar experience with me. But cool. So you know, you were doubtful about college. You came to college. You had these experiences that sort of shaped who you want to be. So what's next? What do you? So the next year and a half.
Right.
Speaking from experience, is just going to be like a month. It's gonna fly.
It's moving so fast already. I was like,
Oh no, it's gonna double its speed. At least for me, it did. You're gonna be a fifth year. No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully you'll get out.
not.
Yeah, but so what do you want to do in the next year and a half before you graduate?
Right.
And what do you want to do when you graduate?
Right. So right now, I've started a company with another one of the.
I didn't know this. Who?
Hannes.
Oh, nice.
With Hannes.
What do you do?
We co-founded a startup. We started about a couple months ago, and we were building an online platform for grants.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we're taking the grant model and we're completely rethinking it.
So like people applying for grants or people issuing the grants?
Both.
Okay.
Both. So we're building a website that pretty much helps standardize that whole process. So projects can go on, research projects, whatever, can go onto this website, and they can create their profile, put in their project details, all that kind of stuff, everything that they would need, and then grants can go on and pretty much like list their grant, and then we can match the project with the grant. So it becomes this so this way where not every grant.
It's a tough
has
problem
their
to
own-
solve,
yeah.
man. It's two-sided.
It is two-sided, yeah. So we have to think about supply and demand very carefully.
Can you just do start with a one-sided thing?
Right. So right now we're trying to build out more. Well, we're trying to get projects on the platform, but we're trying to get like people who are giving grants like engaged, at least with us personally, right? And our first alpha version to launch soon in a couple months will have the project side of things.
Cool.
So yeah.
So projects come in and they create a portfolio, a profile, and enable themselves to be found by
Right.
people
Right.
issuing these grants.
Exactly.
Got it. So, I'm doing a side project with Victor right now.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Well, it's very, very. It was it's 2 weeks old.
Okay.
But Victor was doing. Victor. He's one of our good friends. Maybe you should invite him
Yeah.
on here. But he made his own major at UCSD,
Right.
which is fucking awesome. But you need a 3.5 to do it. Who the hell has time to get a 3.5?
Victor does.
Yeah, Victor does. But he made his own major. It's like I don't know, social networking or something
Right.
like that. And so he has to do this final project, and he's trying to do his final project as a company.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's been telling me about this stuff, and then I forgot what inspired it, but it's a mesh between hearing about Tinder, coffee meets bagel, and my own problem, not in dating, but in sort of meeting new people, right? Like what I talked about last time, I can only be as big, or the company can only be as big as I am. So I'm constantly looking for gnarly people to learn from. Right. So I had this idea of sort of Tinder for professionals that connects people via their LinkedIn accounts.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyone that wants to join, hit us up.
Might want to
But-
check out. Have you heard of an app called Weave?
No, but I will look it up.
It's very similar.
WEAVE.
Yep.
Well, I see space in the marketplace because I don't use it.
Right.
But if I end up using this,
Right.
but the example I found was wait, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say Weave is very popular in the San Francisco Bay Area and New York. I use it here sometimes, but it's like you can swipe through a couple people and then it goes up to LA.
Oh.
It's like there's not many.
Yeah, it's not dense enough.
It's not dense enough here, yeah.
But yeah, so what we're going to build is it's a two-sided marketplace. So the example I used when I was telling this idea to Victor and his professor is I like to learn new things, but I hate having to search a bunch of shit online and compile all information and test one at a time.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to find just an expert locally. So I would have a profile on this app that's downloads from LinkedIn with 5 points of who I am as a person, my experiences, you know, my professional experience, whatever it is, and I say, maybe I tag it or something, we haven't figured it out, like I say I want to go hunting, like I want to fucking learn how to hunt, right?
Sick.
Yeah, I really want to learn how to hunt, but I gotta like buy a gun, like how am I supposed to do that? But if I could just go on this platform and find someone that already hunts like on a weekly basis locally, that'll bring me out, let me use his guns and like teach me how to shoot, like that would be so sick.
Yeah.
And like sort of as a social capital exchange, what he gets back from me is sort of like, so he would see my profile, the 5 things that I did, and say, hey, this guy wants to hunt, but why would I, you know, bring him out the hunt?
I see.
What he would say is, I think, is, oh, like, he might be interested in doing Kickstarter projects or something like that. And he sees that I have a little bit of experience doing Kickstarter, so he might want to spend a day with me learning from me about Kickstarter or whatever the hell I'm doing that interests him, and while he takes me out hunting.
Right.
So I thought that, yeah. But from a two-sided marketplace, it's hard to build initially. So I was thinking you gotta find one very niche, maybe it'll apply to you too. You gotta find one very niche group that's looking for a very specific service or lesson, right? So let's say we gotta find a niche group of 20s kids looking to hunt with specific skill sets that people that hunt on a regular basis look for. Then you just combine the two and bam, build features around it and hopefully expand into other verticals. But same for your grant thing, man.
Right.
Maybe that way.
So that's the thing too. Like we're thinking about, right? Like there's so many different types of grants out there, and so many different types of
you gotta start
projects.
with one.
You know, there's everything from like research projects, like journalism. Publications that are looking for grants, right?
Yeah.
Where do you begin? And so that's something that we're trying to iron out. Which specific market do we want to start in? It's like as Peter Thiel talks about, right? One of the things is that he likes to say is pick us like don't worry about capturing a small fraction of a huge market. Try to capture like the whole pie of a small market and then expand from there.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly
there you go.
The hunting example.
Exactly. There you go.
Cool, man. So what else? What else are you up to?
What else am I up to? See what I do in my free time.
No, so what else do you plan on doing? What's on your bucket list?
What's on my bucket list?
For the next year and a half and for when you graduate.
I mean,
so one thing is the startup you're working with Hannes.
Startup, school, still working with Student Voice. Still keeping on my blog.
Oh yeah.
So I've got my hands rather full right now.
Yeah.
Trying to do too much. I think sometimes I need to say no to some things, and then also helping out with BrightEyes. So
yeah. It's awesome, man.
Got my hands full.
Cool.
And then I've also been reading a lot, so I've been trying to do 1 to 2 books a week.
Impressive.
So throw all that into the mix. I'm literally sleeping at like 3 a.m. every night, which is nice. It works out this quarter because I don't have any morning classes. So.
Yeah, I got into a very bad sleeping schedule when I was in school too. So one last question, or 2 last questions.
Okay, alright.
This is gonna be interesting. So this is from Tim Ferriss' most recent podcast.
Okay, I haven't listened to it yet.
Yeah. So if you had $1 billion to do to sort of make your dent in the world, what would it be?
$1 billion?
$1 billion, man.
$1 billion?
Or let's just say $1 billion is just a number, but infinite. $1 billion's close to that.
Right.
Just as much money as you need to do anything to make your impact in the world.
Right. I mean, I think I've been really inspired lately by this guy named Scooter Braun.
Never heard of him.
Scooter Braun is he's Adam Braun's brother. I don't know if he's older or younger, but basically those 2 brothers are they're like powerhouses. Scooter Braun is he's a kind of music producer. He was the one that was responsible for it. He was pretty much the guy who discovered Justin Bieber and made him famous.
Got
He
it.
was working in music producing.
Okay, I think I've heard of this guy
Made him
before.
famous. I think also Ariana Grande, and then some other, I think,
Jesus.
I forget who else. There was another, like, he had 3 big hits that he
Yeah.
discovered, and he was responsible for bringing into the whole music production
Mhm.
world. And he did a podcast recently. He was a guest on another podcast called Lewis Howe Show, and he was just talking about, you know, how big of a deal family was to him, and how, you know, a lot of his upbringing, the way that he is today, is because of, you know, what his parents did. You know, they grew up as a Jewish family, and they had the, you know, 8 days of Hanukkah or whatever, right? And I think if I remember correctly, how it works is the first like all 8 days you're supposed to get a gift every single day.
Sure, yeah.
Something like that. But their family did it differently, where 4 days they get gifts and 4 days they pick charities to give to.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of just shaped the whole way of how he like saw family and saw work and saw
Sure.
everything, and really wanted to give back.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that, you know, I was able to identify with, even though, you know, I didn't have such a, you know, necessarily powerful upbringing like that. But I still really identified with that, you know, I really want to give back. And so, you know, all that money aside, not even using it, I think, like, I would be happy, I would be satisfied with my dent in the world, being able to, you know, be a good husband, be a good father, you know, raise a, you know, solid family. You know, that in itself would be enough to, you know, put me in a place where I feel absolutely, you know, satisfied. Now, if you give me $1 billion, I'm definitely going to make a dent with that too.
Yeah.
So, that being said, that's kind of like the, you know, the caveat, whatever.
Got it.
But I would definitely want to make big changes, big investments in different areas of education. You know, kind of similar to what Bill Gates is doing with his kind of philanthropic efforts. But at the same time, I would do it very differently than Bill Gates.
Okay.
Bill Gates is very data driven.
Mm-hmm.
I think a little too much so. And I would try to, like.
So what's the downside of being data driven?
So it comes down to it, like, his metric for success that he measures by is, at the end of the day, still kind of a standardized test, right? If we can standardize and measure, like, quantify.
Oh, okay, so you're talking about his philanthropic efforts in education,
Right.
Not in, like.
Right, specifically in
medicine.
education.
Got it.
If you really think about it, like, he's a great man. He's doing
Yeah.
great things in
Oh, yeah.
education. It's incredible.
I mean,
Like,
in health, man, like in public health, he's killing it.
yeah, no, he's like one of the
Malaria
people.
will be gone.
I think there was on one of the Tim Ferriss shows, like, they were talking about, like, you know, Bill Gates is someone that could, you know, wipe out malaria with one donation.
Right.
That's pretty much what he's doing, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really cool. I think that, you know, so education, that'd be a big area for me. And then,
But like how? Like, well, so what would you do differently?
what would I do differently? So I would fundamentally rethink a lot of the models.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of, like,
So what would your model be like?
there's a lot of very interesting models out there, and I think I would draw from a lot of those. So, for example, like, from Montessori, the Montessori method, which is very, like, you know, like, the whole Montessori pedagogy is that students are intrinsically motivated. They, you know, you leave them alone, they will intrinsically want to learn by
Yeah.
themselves. It's very natural, and, you know, you should let that inner creativity come out. You know,
Mhm.
that's very Montessori, as well as, you know, also some of the, you know, I think beyond, you know, just learning, because that makes a lot of sense for, you know, a certain demographic, right? But what about people that, you know, aren't as in privileged societies, or, you know, don't have as much money, you know, are in the poverty line, like a model like KIPP seems to work very well for them, where it's very rigid, very militant, like, you wear a uniform, you come to school from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., you know, and you even go to school on Saturdays. Like, that works well for them for a certain reason.
Right.
Right. And so, I mean, when it all boils down to it, I don't think that there's one, like, educational pedagogy that works for, you know, like, everyone, right? I think it really depends on the person, your background, where you're from, like what you need most. And so I mean I think fundamentally the thing that would separate that I would do differently, that tangibly differently, is provide more opportunity for each student to recognize what they need the most and what works best for them.
Sure. And
put them in that situation.
Got it.
I think that's kind of the bottom line.
Cool. So I mean, the second question was going to be, if you had $1 billion, what would you do with your time? You already answered that with the very beginning. You'd spend it with your family.
Right.
But the original question is, the point of it is to find your passion. In general, when you ask that question, someone answers it. It's basically putting money aside, right? When you give someone $1 billion, money doesn't matter anymore. Putting money aside, what do they deep, like in their core, care about?
Exactly.
So, education is what you really care about.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's all I had.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We at BrightEyes recognize that to be successful, we